Hello there, my name is Ismas. Welcome to Blender 2.8 Tips for Beginners. This is tip number 11. We are going to be looking at using transparent textures in Blender. So say you have an image like this with transparency, and if you go to Photoshop, you can see that this has no background. That's what I mean by transparency. And you want to use it as an image texture, maintaining the transparent areas transparent. And maybe you want to model a leaf like this, but you don't want to add all these details. There you want to use a transparency to add those details, because modeling this can take a while and it's really not necessary. So let's see how to do that. Let's open up a new Blender project. We can load this cube and then add a plane. Scale it a bit and then move it in the top menu. So in Blender 2.8 we have the shading tab where we can add the materials and texturing and everything, and it has different panels. We have this view area where you can preview the textures, and this node editor, which is now called the shader editor. So they are separating the compositor and the shader editor. The compositing will be for the compositing, and the shader editor would be for making shaders. In the previous versions of Blender, they were combined and they were called the node editor. Now they are separated. This one is going to be the shader editor. So let's create a new shader. Click new. We will add a principal shader. That's the default shader nowadays, and we need an image texture. So there are two ways to add an image texture. You can either use the shortcut Shift A to add it, to go to texture, image texture, and then navigate to the texture you want to add. But I find that the easiest way to do it is to just drag the image texture directly there, and it will create the texture node for you, and then you can connect it to the base color so that you can see the texture. Right now we need to UV unwrap our plane so that we have control over the texture. So let's do that. Go to edit mode, hit U on your keyboard, then unwrap, and we have that. So in the UV image editor here, you can see they have changed it a little bit. So it's now called, let's see. It's still called the UV image editor, but now you see, now we have UV unwrapped, but we still are not seeing the UV layout. This is because that the UV image editor has now been modified. We have the view and the UV image editor as different modes. So in the view mode, you can have an image like this, and it will be there regardless whether you are in edit mode or not, and what image object you are selected. So it will be there as for reference, and you won't have any UV layouts on top of it. So to see the UV layouts, you just have to switch to the different mode. You have to switch to UV editor. So now you can see that the UV is here. Let's change to island mode, and then move this. So let's also scale this down so that we can only see the leaf that we want to get. Maybe let's go for this one here because it's more interesting. It has much more details. And if this is creating problems, you can just get a knife tool and maybe cut out that part. And let's select, go to face mode, delete that face, and it doesn't matter the shape of the object, because we are going to be using transparent, and everything that is white here is going to be transparent. As you see that there is nothing, because our Blender replaces the transparent areas with white, just to show you in the preview window here. But if we go to shading mode, we are still seeing the transparency areas, we are still seeing the white background, because the principal shader by default doesn't really give you that transparency. So what we want to use is a shader called the transparency shader. For some reason it's not working in the default renderer, which is Eve renderer. So we need to change this to cycles, and there you can see So we can connect this. You see, let's add a background in the wall, so that we have something to look at in the background. So let's see, HDRI, we'll find, let's use this. You see, this transparency shader makes everything simply transparent, and you can control the transparency by changing the color here. So full black is opaque, and full white is transparent. But we still want to maintain this color. But when we simply connect it, it replaces that transparency we need. So we can use a mix shader, Shift A shader, mix shader, and add the principal shader there, and we can use the alpha channel. So if you turn on Node Wrangler, if you have Node Wrangler turned on, you can use Control Shift and then right click. Let me make sure that I have that turned on. I'll go to settings, edit, preferences, add-ons, Node Wrangler. So if you have that enabled, you can just hold down Control Shift and then Shift click, and then click on the image texture to preview how that looks. And if you do that again, it will show you how the transparency looks. So we can use this node here, the transparency node, control the factor between the mix shader and the transparency shader. So let's again use Control Shift click to have that as our this as our shader. And so we can just drag this alpha channel to control the factor, and we will have our transparency. But we still have this color connected to this, so we can just remove that, and you see we have now a transparency shader. Let me just repeat this because I think there was a lot of things that went on here that I may need to clear out a bit. Let's redo this. Let me delete this and go back to solid mode. Add Shift A, add a plane. Let's go back to shading mode. We need to UV unwrap this and move this. We also need to add a new material. We can just use, we can add the texture. Let me just drag it directly. But we need to control the transparency with this alpha option, so we can add a mix shader and then a transparency shader. So this is simply making everything transparent. So we need to use the alpha channel here as the factor to control the transparency. You can see we have that. So you can now come in, scale down the UVs to get any of the leaves you want. So maybe you can also just move these vertices around. You see we have our leaf.